The human diplomat, Ryan Doran, adjusted the collar of his formal uniform as he stepped onto the bridge of the RXL Zenith, the flagship of the alien Lithuran fleet. Towering, sleek, and pulsating with a faint blue glow, the alien warship was unlike anything he'd seen before. Its crew, tall and elegant with shimmering sapphire skin and glowing silver eyes, watched him with a mix of curiosity and distrust. Ryan felt the weight of their stares as he approached the central dais where Commander Vath Shira stood. Vath was as imposing as she was beautiful. Her silver-plated armor shimmered under the ship's dim lighting, her long jet-black hair tied in a braid that fell across her shoulder. Her eyes, sharp and piercing, locked onto Ryan the moment he stepped forward. She didn't speak at first, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. The Lithuran Council had sent her as their lead negotiator, but it was clear she preferred action over words. "Human," Veith finally said, her voice low and commanding, "do you realize the gravity of your presence here? This alliance teeters on the edge of failure. Your species' survival depends on convincing me you're worth the risk." Ryan swallowed hard. He wasn't new to high-stakes negotiations, but something about Veith's tone made him feel like he was standing on trial. "Commander Shai," he began, forcing confidence into his voice, "humanity is ready to prove its value as an ally. We may lack your advanced technology, but we bring creativity, resourcefulness, and resilience to the table." The Lithuran crew exchanged skeptical glances. VTH raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Words mean little to me, human. I need actions, not promises." She turned sharply to face him, her silver eyes narrowing. "You have one chance to convince me. Speak wisely." Ryan's mind raced. He had spent weeks studying Lithuran culture and customs, but none of it had prepared him for this moment. Veith was clearly testing him, and if he failed, the alliance could crumble. A flicker of an idea crossed his mind. Reckless, yes, but it might just work. As Veith continued to stare him down, Ryan suddenly stepped closer, closing the gap between them. The Lithuran crew gasped, some reaching for their weapons, but Ryan held up his hands in a gesture of peace. Before anyone could react, he leaned forward and placed a brief, gentle kiss on Veith's cheek. The room fell deathly silent. Veith froze, her entire body rigid as if she'd been struck by lightning. Her silver eyes widened, and for the first time, Ryan saw something in her expression he hadn't expected, pure, unfiltered shock. The silence dragged on, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Ryan stepped back, trying to gauge her reaction. "A gesture of trust," he said, his voice calm despite the racing of his heart. "In human culture, a kiss is a symbol of goodwill and mutual respect." Veith's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Her crew, however, erupted into a flurry of whispers, their alien voices rising in confusion and alarm. Ryan glanced around, realizing too late that he might have made a serious mistake. Veith finally found her voice, though it was shaky and strained. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she demanded, her eyes narrowing into a dangerous glare. Ryan blinked, confused. "I thought it would help establish trust. Did I misread the situation?" Veith took a step closer, her towering figure casting a shadow over him. "In Lithuran culture," she hissed, her voice low and trembling with barely contained fury, "a kiss is not a symbol of trust. It is a declaration of a life bond. You have just declared me your partner for life." Ryan's jaw dropped. "Wait, what?" Before he could say another word, Veith spun on her heel and stormed out of the room, her cape fluttering behind her. The Lithuran crew stared at Ryan in stunned silence, their expressions ranging from disbelief to outright horror. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. "Well," he muttered to himself, "this could have gone better." And with that, His journey aboard the RXL Zenith had taken an unexpected and irreversible turn. Ryan paced nervously in his quarters aboard the RXL Zenith, replaying the scene from earlier in his mind. He thought he was diffusing the tension with a bold human gesture of goodwill, but instead he plunged himself into a cultural misunderstanding of galactic proportions. A life bond, partner for life. It all sounded like something out of a bad romance novel. Yet here he was, trapped in the middle of it. The door to his room slid open abruptly, and in marched Commander Vith Shira, her silver eyes blazing with fury. The door hissed shut behind her, leaving Ryan no room for escape. She looked even more intimidating up close, her armor glinting in the dim light. Her braided hair swayed as she crossed her arms and glared at him. "You will explain yourself," Vith demanded, her voice sharp and commanding. "Did you kiss me out of ignorance, or was this some calculated ploy to humiliate me in front of my crew?" Ryan raised his hands defensively. "Ignorance, definitely ignorance. I had no idea a kiss meant, well, that, in your culture." Vith narrowed her eyes, her expression unreadable. "In Lytheran culture," she began slowly, as if explaining to a child, "a kiss is the most sacred gesture between two beings. It signifies an unbreakable bond, a partnership that transcends duty, life, and even death." Ryan's heart sank. "Okay, but there's got to be some kind of misunderstanding clause, right? Like a way to annul it or reverse it." Vitish's expression hardened. "Number A. Life bond is absolute. To sever it would bring dishonor to both parties. It would also weaken our people's trust in your species." She paused, her voice dripping with disdain. "Congratulations, human. You've just become my greatest burden." Ryan groaned and sank into a chair. "This has to be the weirdest diplomatic crisis in history. I didn't mean to bond with anyone. I was just trying to, I don't know, make a statement." VTH's tone softened slightly, though her glare didn't waver. "What you've done is reckless. But now that the bond exists, you are my responsibility, and I am yours. The Council will expect us to demonstrate the bond's strength, or they will question our alliance entirely." Ryan looked up at her, incredulous. "You're saying I have to play along with this?" Vithake let out a heavy sigh, her composure finally cracking. "Yes, human. Unless you want to spark an intergalactic incident, you will have to endure this partnership." Ryan leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Great, just great. First contact with an alien species, and I've already managed to get married by accident." VTH rolled her eyes. "Don't flatter yourself. This is not a marriage. It's a bond, a duty we must uphold for the sake of our people. Nothing more." But as she turned to leave, her sharp tone faltered. "You may not understand what you've done, human, but it's real now. You should prepare yourself for what's coming." As the door hissed shut behind her, Ryan sat in stunned silence. He had no idea what preparing himself even meant, but he had a sinking feeling that his life had just become a lot more complicated. Ryan woke up the next morning, feeling no closer to understanding the chaos he had stumbled into. His quarters on the RXL Zenith were spacious, but alien, with walls that it seemed to ripple faintly like liquid metal, and a soft bluish light that emanated from nowhere in particular. He stared at the ceiling, trying to process his new reality. He was bonded to Commander Val Shira, and there was no escape from the situation without jeopardizing the fragile alliance between humanity and the Lutherans. The door to his room slid open, startling him. In walked Kin Val, Shira's second-in-command, a tall and imposing Lutheran with sharp features and an even sharper tongue. Kellin Silvereyes appraised Ryan with barely disguised disdain. "Get up, human!" Kellin barked. "You're expected on the training deck. Commander Vith insists you begin preparing for the bond trials immediately." Ryan sat up, confused. Bond trials? What trials? Kellin's lips curled into a smirk. Did you think a life bond was just ceremonial? No, it must be proven through a series of challenges designed to test your compatibility and commitment. If you fail, both of you will be disgraced, and the alliance will be questioned. Ryan groaned, running a hand through his hair. Great. No pressure or anything. Kellin stepped closer, his towering form casting a shadow over Ryan. Let me be clear, human. You are unworthy of our commander. She has spent her entire life earning her place at the top, and now she is saddled with you. If you embarrass her, you will regret it. Ryan stood up, squaring his shoulders despite the knot of anxiety in his stomach. Look, I didn't ask for this either, but I'm not going to back down. If there's a way to make this work, I'll figure it out. Kellin scoffed, but gestured for Ryan to follow him. They walked through the ship's winding corridors, past Liaran crew members who shot Ryan curious and sometimes hostile glances. The tension was palpable, and Ryan couldn't help but feel like he was an intruder in their world. When they arrived at the training deck, Ryan's heart sank. The massive room was filled with Liaran's sparring, lifting impossibly heavy weights and demonstrating agility that no human could match. Veith stood at the center, her presence commanding as always. She was sparring with two opponents at once, moving with precision and power that left Ryan awestruck. She noticed him and ended the fight with a swift, decisive move that left her opponents on the ground. She strode toward Ryan, her expression unreadable. "You're late," she said curtly. "Blame your guy here," Ryan replied, nodding toward Kellin. Veith ignored the comment and handed Ryan a strange-looking weapon, a staff-like object that pulsed with energy. "If you're going to survive the Bond trials, you'll need to learn how to fight like a Litheran. Let's see what you've got." Ryan took the weapon hesitantly, feeling its unfamiliar weight. "This should be interesting," he muttered. Veith smirked faintly, the first hint of amusement he'd seen from her. "Interesting is one word for it. Let's begin." As Ryan assumed a clumsy fighting stance, he realized that this wasn't just a test of skill. It was a test of his determination to prove himself in a world where he didn't belong. The stakes had never felt higher. The training deck buzzed with activity as the Liaran crew watched Ryan struggle to wield the alien staff-like weapon Veith had handed him. Every swing he attempted was either too slow or poorly aimed, and the staff's pulsing energy seemed to hum in protest each time he fumbled. Laughter rippled through the room, and Ryan could feel the weight of the crew's disdain like a physical force pressing down on him. Commander Val Shira, standing tall with her arms crossed, observed him with a critical eye. She wasn't laughing, but she wasn't offering much encouragement either. Instead, she waited until Ryan tripped over his own feet and landed flat on his back before stepping forward. "Pathetic," Fifth said, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. "If you fight like this during the Bond trials, you'll embarrass not just yourself, but me as well. Is that what you want?" Ryan groaned, picking himself up and dusting off his pants. "Of course not," he muttered, gripping the staff more tightly. "But this thing doesn't exactly come with a manual." Veith sighed and motioned for the crew to clear the space around them. "Enough excuses. You need to learn, and you need to learn now. Watch me." She grabbed her own staff, spinning it effortlessly in her hands. The energy pulsed in sync with her movements, creating a faint hum that seemed almost musical. "Focus," Fifth instructed. "The weapon responds to your intent. If you hesitate, it will hesitate. If you doubt yourself, it will falter. Show confidence, even if you don't feel it." Ryan watched her, mesmerized by the fluidity of her movements. She made it look so easy, but he could tell it was anything but. Gritting his teeth, he mimicked her stance and tried to steady his breathing. He swung the staff again, this time with more determination. The energy pulsed faintly, as if acknowledging his effort. "That's better," Veith said, nodding slightly. "But don't stop there. Attack me." Ryan blinked. "Wait, what?" "You heard me," Veith said, twirling her staff and taking a defensive stance. "Come at me with everything you've got. If you're going to survive the bond trials, you'll need to face worse than me." The crew fell silent, their eyes fixed on the unlikely pair. Ryan hesitated for a moment, but then tightened his grip and charged forward. Veith deflected his first strike with ease, spinning around him and landing a light tap on his shoulder. "Too slow," she said. Ryan growled in frustration, attacking again. This time, he put more force into his movements, trying to anticipate her counters. Veith dodged and blocked with the grace of a seasoned warrior, but Ryan's persistence seemed to catch her attention. After several rounds of sparring, Ryan finally managed to land a hit. Not a powerful one, but enough to make Veith step back slightly. The crew let out a collective gasp. Veith raised an eyebrow, her lips twitching into a faint smile. "Not bad for a human." Ryan, panting and drenched in sweat, couldn't help but grin. "I'll take that as a compliment." Veith lowered her staff and looked at him with something resembling approval. "Perhaps there's hope for you yet," she said. "But don't get cocky. This was only the beginning." As Ryan wiped the sweat from his brow, he realized that for the first time since arriving on the RXL Zenith, he had earned a sliver of respect from Veith and the crew. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Later that evening, Ryan sat in the quiet corner of the ship's observation deck, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. The training session with Veith had left him sore and exhausted, but his mind was still racing. He had seen a flicker of respect in Veith's eyes, and for once he felt like he might have a chance to prove himself, not just to her, but to the entire Liaran crew. The sound of soft footsteps behind him broke his thoughts. Turning his head, he saw Veith approaching, her armor replaced with a sleek dark tunic that made her look far less intimidating. She carried two small crystal-like containers, each glowing faintly with a blue liquid. Ryan raised an eyebrow as she sat down beside him, placing one of the containers in front of him. "What's this?" Ryan asked, eyeing the glowing drink suspiciously. "Liaran restorative drink," Veith replied, leaning back against the bench. "It will help with the soreness, and no, it won't poison you." Ryan chuckled lightly and picked up the container, taking a cautious sip. The liquid was cool and refreshing, with a taste that reminded him of mint and honey. Instantly, a soothing warmth spread through his body, dulling the aches from the training session. "Okay, I'll admit it," he said. "This is good." Veith said nothing for a moment, her gaze fixed on the stars outside. The silence between them was surprisingly comfortable, and Ryan couldn't help but feel that the normally stern commander was softer tonight. He decided to test the waters. "Can I ask you something?" he began. Veith turned her head slightly, her silver eyes meeting his. "If it's another question about the bond, I might throw you out the airlock," Ryan smirked. "No, not that. I'm curious. You're clearly a brilliant leader, respected by your crew, but why did you choose this life? Why the military?" Veith hesitated, as if debating whether to answer. Finally, she let out a quiet sigh. "The Liaran military isn't just a career, it's a legacy. My family has served for generations, and I was expected to follow in their footsteps. My mother was a war hero. My father commanded one of the largest fleets in our history. I had no choice but to live up to their expectations." Ryan frowned. "That sounds like a lot of pressure." "It is," Veith admitted, her voice softening, "but it's also my purpose. I've spent my life fighting for my people, protecting them. It's all I've ever known." She glanced at him, a hint of vulnerability in her expression. "And now, because of you, I'm bound by a tradition I didn't choose." Ryan shifted uncomfortably, guilt gnawing at him. "I didn't mean to disrupt your life." Veeth shook her head. "You didn't disrupt it. You complicated it. But maybe that's not entirely a bad thing." Her lips curved into the faintest smile, catching Ryan off guard. For a moment, they simply sat there, the tension between them easing. Ryan realized that beneath Veeth's fierce exterior was someone just as burdened by expectations as he was. And maybe, just maybe, they could navigate this strange bond together. "I'll do my best not to let you down," Ryan said quietly. Veeth's smile grew a fraction wider. "We'll see, human. We'll see." The next day, Ryan was jolted awake by the sharp blare of alarms echoing through the RXL zenith. Red lights flashed along the walls of his quarters, and a voice over the ship's intercom barked, "All crew to battle stations!" Security breach detected. Ryan scrambled out of bed, throwing on his jacket as the door slid open to reveal Kellin, Veeth's second-in-command, standing with a grim expression. "Human, follow me," Kellin ordered. "The commander needs you now." Ryan barely had time to protest as Kellin dragged him through the chaotic corridors of the ship. Crew members rushed past, armed and shouting orders in the alien Lytheran tongue. Ryan's stomach churned as they reached the command deck, where Veeth stood in the center, her expression cold and focused. A holographic display showed a map of the ship with several sections marked in flashing red. "What's going on?" Ryan asked, trying to keep up. Veeth didn't look at him, her eyes fixed on the display. "A sabr," she said tersely. "Someone has disabled our navigation systems and locked us on a course into Sen territory. If we don't regain control soon, we'll be sitting ducks for their warships." Ryan's heart sank. The Xans were a brutal and merciless alien faction known for attacking anyone who wandered into their territory. "Can't you just override the systems?" he asked. "We've tried," Veeth replied, her voice taut with frustration. "Whoever did this knew exactly how to hack the ship. The only way to fix it is to find the saber and undo the damage manually." Ryan hesitated, then said, "Let me help. I know a thing or two about systems. Maybe I can spot something you missed." Veeth finally turned to him, her silver eyes scrutinizing him. "Fine, but don't slow us down. Kellin, take him to engineering and start searching for the saber." Kellin looked less than thrilled, but nodded. "Come on, human. Try not to get in the way." As they made their way to the engineering bay, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The Liarans were meticulous and disciplined. How could someone infiltrate their ship so easily? When they arrived at the bay, Ryan immediately noticed the chaos. Panels had been ripped open, wires dangled like vines, and sparks flew from damaged consoles. Kellin motioned for Ryan to check the systems while he and a group of soldiers began searching for any sign of the saboteur. Ryan knelt by a console, quickly analyzing the controls. It didn't take long for him to spot something unusual, a backdoor in the ship's software that someone had used to gain access to critical systems. Whoever did this wasn't just a saboteur, Ryan muttered to himself. They had inside knowledge. Before he could warn Kellin, a shadow moved in the corner of the room. Ryan turned just in time to see a figure darting toward the exit. "There!" he shouted. Kellin and his soldiers sprang into action, cornering the suspect in moments. To Ryan's shock, the saboteur was none other than Draven, a high-ranking officer who had always seemed loyal to Veeth. Draven sneered as he was restrained, his betrayal evident in his defiant glare. "Why would you do this?" Veeth demanded when she arrived, her voice icy with anger. Draven smirked. "Because you're weak, Commander. Binding yourself to a human, you've made a mockery of Lytheran traditions. I won't let you drag us down." Veeth's fists clenched, but she quickly regained her composure. "Take him to the brig," she ordered, her tone unwavering. "We'll deal with him later." As Draven was hauled away, Ryan stepped forward. "Looks like your crew isn't as loyal as you thought," he said carefully. Veeth shot him a sharp look. "This isn't over, human. The damage he's caused will take time to repair, and we're still heading toward Kaxen territory. If you truly want to prove yourself, you'll help us fix this." Ryan nodded, determination hardening in his chest. "Then let's get to work." The stakes had never been higher, and Ryan knew he had to step up. Together with Veeth and the crew, they raced against time to save the ship and themselves from the looming threat. The RXL Zenith shuddered as it drifted closer to the edge of Kaxen territory. The ship's damaged navigation systems had been partially repaired, but the saboteurs' work had left them vulnerable. The Kaxen warships would detect them soon, and Veeth's command had already sent out urgent orders to prepare for a potential battle. Tension gripped the crew, and even Ryan could feel it in the air. Veeth stood in the center of the command deck, issuing instructions with a calm yet commanding voice. Her composure was remarkable, but Ryan could see the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Every choice she made now could mean the difference between survival and annihilation. Ryan approached cautiously, holding a datapad filled with the diagnostic reports he'd been working on. "Veeth, I think I've found a way to bypass the last of the damage Draven caused," he said. "It's risky, but it could give us enough control to change course." Veeth turned to him, her silver eyes narrowing as she studied the datapad. "Explain," she said, her tone brisk. Ryan pointed to the schematic of the ship's navigation systems. "The Keeksons use an encrypted relay system to monitor their borders. If we can temporarily piggyback off one of their signals, we might be able to mask our presence long enough to make an escape." VTH's brow furrowed. "If we're caught trying to use their system, they'll see it as an act of aggression," Ryan said. "I know." VTH's gaze hardened. "But if we don't try, they'll detect us anyway. This gives us a chance." Vianth stared at him for a long moment before nodding. "Very well. I'll authorize it, but you'll oversee the process. If this fails, I want to know it wasn't because you didn't give it everything." Ryan swallowed hard, but nodded. "I won't let you down." As Ryan worked with the engineering team to implement his plan, Veeth the Ape stayed by his side, her presence both reassuring and intimidating. The task required precise timing and coordination, and every second felt like an eternity. The crew watched with bated breath as Ryan's fingers flew over the controls, inputting the necessary codes to access the Kaxen relay. Finally, the system beeped in acknowledgement. "We're in," Ryan said, relief flooding his voice. "Masking our signal now." The command deck erupted in murmurs of cautious optimism, but the relief was short-lived. A sharp alert blared through the ship, and a holographic display lit up with the unmistakable shape of a Keeksen warship. "They've detected us," Kellin announced grimly. "They're hailing us." Veeth's jaw tightened. "Open the channel!" The face of a Xen commander appeared on the display, his reptilian features twisted into a sneer. "Aryans," he hissed, "trespassing in our territory and with a human aboard. Explain yourselves." Ryan stepped forward before Fifth could respond. "This is my fault," he said boldly. "I was trying to fix a mistake, and we accidentally entered your space. If anyone's to blame, it's me." The Kaxen commander laughed, a cold, menacing sound. "Brave for a human, but bravery won't save you." Before the Kaxen could order an attack, Veeth interrupted. "You have no reason to destroy us. We've done no harm, and we have no intention of lingering. Let us pass, and we will ensure this never happens again." The Kaxen commander stared at her for a long moment, then grunted. "You have one chance, Litheran. Leave now. If we see you again, there will be no mercy." The channel closed, and the crew let out a collective sigh of relief as the Kaxen ship turned away. VTR looked at Ryan, a rare flicker of gratitude in her eyes. "You took a risk," she said quietly, "and it paid off." Ryan shrugged, though his heart was pounding. "I figured it was worth a shot." Beth allowed herself a faint smile. Perhaps you're not as reckless as I thought, but don't get too comfortable. There's still much to prove. Ryan nodded, knowing the final trial wasn't just about escaping danger. It was about proving that together they could face whatever came next. The RXL Zenith finally broke free from the edges of Caxen territory, its engines humming with a steady rhythm as the ship cruised into safer space. Relief washed over the crew, but the tension that had gripped the ship for days hadn't completely dissipated. Ryan sat in the corner of the command deck, leaning against the wall and trying to catch his breath. The Caxen standoff had taken everything out of him, and the weight of his earlier gamble still lingered in his mind. Commander 5th Shira stood in front of the main display, scanning the systems to ensure there were no lingering threats. Her sharp silver eyes softened slightly as she glanced at Ryan. "Human," she said, her voice calm yet firm. "Report." Ryan forced himself to his feet, the soreness from training and stress still gnawing at his muscles. "The navigation systems are fully restored, and we're clear of Caxen sensors," he said, wiping his brow. "For now, we're safe." VTH nodded. "Good work. You've done better than I expected." Ryan smirked faintly. "I'll take that as a compliment." The room grew quiet as Veith dismissed the crew, leaving only Ryan and herself on the deck. She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. For the first time, Ryan felt an unusual nervousness around her, unsure of what she was about to say. "Ryan," Fifth began, her tone softer than usual, "what you did back there, standing up to the Caxen, putting yourself at risk, it wasn't just brave, it was honorable. You showed courage even when you had no obligation to protect us." Ryan shrugged, trying to downplay her words. "I couldn't just stand by and let us get blasted out of the sky. Besides, I've got a knack for getting out of impossible situations." Veith stepped closer, her piercing gaze locking onto his. "You've proven yourself in ways I didn't expect. When this bond was first forced upon us, I saw it as a burden, something that would weaken my leadership and reputation. But now—" She hesitated, her usually confident demeanor faltering for a moment. "Now, I see it as something more." Ryan blinked, unsure of how to respond. "Something more?" VT's lips curved into a faint smile. "Yes, you've earned not only my respect, but also my trust. And in Lytheran culture, trust is the... This final part has a perfect sense of closure for their evolving relationship. Here's the polished version. Foundation of any bond," Viath continued, her voice steady. "Perhaps this isn't as much of a mistake as I once thought." Ryan let out a small laugh, scratching the back of his head. "You're saying I'd grow on you?" Veith raised an eyebrow. "Don't get ahead of yourself, human. I'm saying that perhaps this bond isn't entirely unwelcome anymore." For a moment, they stood in silence, the tension between them replaced by something warmer, something almost comforting. Ryan felt a strange sense of pride swell in his chest. He hadn't just survived this ordeal. He'd earned his place aboard the RXL Zenith, and perhaps even in Veith's life. "Well," Ryan said with a grin, "if we're in for life, I guess we better figure out how to make this work." Veth's smile widened ever so slightly. "Indeed, but don't think this means I'll go easy on you. You still have much to learn." Ryan chuckled. Wouldn't have it any other way. As the ship sailed on through the stars, Ryan and Veith stood side by side, ready to face whatever challenges the universe had in store for them. Their bond, once accidental and unwanted, had become something stronger, a partnership forged through trial, trust, and determination. And for the first time, Ryan felt like he truly belonged in the vast expanse of the galaxy.